Welcome back. This is the 5th National General Council of the ANC. We're live to you from Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center in Boksburg in the east of Gauteng. It's a wrap of day one. It's a wrap at least in as far as the rest of us are concerned. But I tell you now, the delegates are going to be burning the midnight oil. And that's because currently, or within the next few minutes, what will be under focus is the Treasurer General's report. And of course, that's a closed session. That's when they get to grapple with money issues. Where does the ANC stand as far as money issues are concerned, as well as then celebrate and mark the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. So let's try and wrap it up nicely for you. SABC News political editor Mzwandi Lembeje and specialist correspondent Sophie Mkwena. Good evening to the both of you. You've had a long day, so I appreciate that. I'm empathetic and sympathetic. Mzwandi, let me start with you.
Yeah.
Day one, there was the president's speech,
yes,
followed by, in the main, the messages of support, and then followed by the midterm report of the Secretary General delivering it. Tell me how it went from your perspective, given what we were expecting, what the ANC was insisting that this is a midterm review. It's not about leadership. Has it managed to contain that and focus on that work?
Well, interestingly, Thulas, it has somehow not really spilled over into the leadership like we have seen before. So they've managed to really look into some of the issues and actually even in terms of taking stock, conceding and admitting some of the failures on their part, which I found quite interesting. Ordinarily, the organizational report is normally closed because they normally talk about their difficulties, but they decided to let it open, and then they openly dealt with some of the challenges, even telling us how it all started, so which I found very quite frank. Even the president, he was quite clear in terms of the characterization of some of the aspects of the party and the failures. But also when it comes to the alliance, the SACP was one of the parties that delivered a message of support. It went well at the beginning, and we thought, wow, he had managed to perhaps
This is
speak.
Madala Masuku,
That's
right?
Madala Masuku, the first DSG of the SACP. We had thought he had managed to find a way of dealing with the ANC delegates until he got to a point to say the SACP is not contesting the elections because it's fighting with the ANC, and the ANC delegates had none of that. That's when you realize that actually tensions are boiling over, and this marriage, for me, and from what it's basically over.
It's a sore point, isn't it, Sophie? And it can't be ignored. This tension that says we remain in alliance, but we are competing with you when it comes to the hearts and minds.
It can't work.
Yeah.
It can't work. It can't work. I understand the SACP having to take its own decisions, its own resolutions based on its constituency and the mandate from the constituency. But it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It will continue to escalate, particularly towards local government and, of course, the national elections. And if the SACP is not able to do well during local government elections, some of its members will start complaining, and somebody will have to take a blame. And it will even affect the SACP itself. But the reality is, it is a Congress resolution. They have to implement that. And as it relates to the ANC members, how they responded, that's how they are going to respond on the ground. To take this as a contestation. They are now opponents as it relates to elections.
But there's a context for it also, if you talk to that context. It comes from that whole talk about reconfiguration of the alliance.
Exactly.
That's been a pain for the SACP for a long time, this feeling that the alliance is not centered in terms of dictating what happens in government, driving government, but rather it seems the ANC is centered and wanting the alliance to be more centered.
That is why I'm saying it's a resolution of a Congress. After the SACP members had their own introspection in terms of their role within the alliance and going forward, but also looking at broader issues as it relates to what happened to the ANC as the leader of the alliance in the eyes of the voters and the South African population. And therefore they felt that perhaps it's time, because they don't want to listen to us, when we talk about issues of corruption, when we talk about issues of incompetent people, when we talk about the komtsotsis within the ANC, and therefore we have no option but to try our own, way to ensure that we are still involved in leading in terms of the working class. And therefore, it's the resolution of the Congress. You can't reverse it unless you have a special Congress before the local government election and you get a mandate to reverse that. For now, it's going to be very, very, very difficult, but it's affecting both the SACP and the ANC as it relates to preparations for local government elections.
I want us to talk, Mzwai and Sophia, about the candor of the reflections. It's a known fact. The ANC is really good at diagnosing itself. What ails the ANC, they will put it out there for them to discuss. And as you rightly say, Mzwai, previously the organizational report, the midterm report, would have been a document only for consumption by delegates. But now it's getting to a point where they open it up. But even by their standards, you've had opportunity to read this document and listen to. What do you make of it, even by their standards of candor?
As you have said, I have always, also having covered the ANC, having read their documents, one of the things that I've picked up, and I speak about it quite continuously, is that if there are people who can be able to diagnose the problem, it is the ANC. They will tell you exactly what needs to be done, what went wrong, how it went wrong. Here is the difficulty, is to then heal that problem, is to then implement those resolutions. In fact, going back to what Sophie said around the reconfigured alliance, I actually, as I sit here, I remember very well, and I think all of us will remember, going to 2007, one of the things that the then General Secretary, Nzimande, used to say about the configuration, to say, we are going to Polokwane, we want the reconfiguration, either the reconfiguration of the alliance or the change of leadership. He basically said, by reconfiguration, he characterized it by two things. You either reconfigure the alliance through changing of the heart, so which means you take seriously what we're talking about, or change of leadership. That was back then, 2007. Fast forward to today, the same reconfiguration is still spoken about. Perhaps, which is exactly what has led to what we are witnessing now. In fact, also going to your question, Thulas, to say they are able to diagnose the problem in terms of attending to it.
In fact, I mean, Sophie, I don't know what stood out for you from the midterm report. For me, it's just the grappling with the electoral losses of 2024. Going as far as saying we were in denial.
They are still in denial, I think. I'm saying this because I expected a more robust analysis of the elections. Yes, because, look, you had quite a chunk of South African population who are supposed to go to the polls, who didn't go to the polls. Don't worry about those who voted for other parties. They must worry about those who didn't go to the polls, because the message there is that we still don't see an alternative. Therefore, you can still recapture the lost ground. And therefore, you have to be more upfront and more robust in your analysis. Where did you go wrong? But I understand, remember, there's an overlap of leadership all the time. It's not a wholesale. Therefore, you may pinpoint to the weaknesses of the past 15 years, but some were part of it, either in the party or in government, and therefore you will be very diplomatic. But I think behind the scenes, they will have to, the delegates, be frank and really interrogate what South African people are saying about the ANC in terms of where did they go wrong, where have they veered off the road, with the intention to introspect. The president says one thing that he pointed out, and Balula emphasized that, is that during the campaign was not good. It was not formidable. And there was no door-to-door.
There was not enough door-to-door, yes.
With the people. Yes, people will express their anger.
Yes.
It's fine. Let them pour out so that they feel relieved that they've told you where to get off. But if you avoid that interaction because you are scared that these people are going to be very hard on us or hostile, then you create a problem.
We're drawing to a close, but I want your reflections. You have been part of the coverage of many of these events, and you have the benefit of being able to place them in their context. Today's Gqeberha, July 2000 was the first one, National General Council, Tshwane 2005, and I think that's the one that many people will remember. Then you had KZN Durban, that's September 2010, and then Midrand in Gauteng in October 2015. In terms of mood and temperature, the conduct of the delegates, is it radically different?
It's
very different.
Very different. If I may start, it's a bit subdued, and you would expect that. Remember, the ANC is wounded. That 40% doesn't sit well with them. But also there has been lots of behind-the-scenes wrangling in terms of who did what, including the formation of the government of national unity. So you can see that it's heavy. It's heavy for delegates. It's heavy for the leadership. But give it to them in terms of the conduct. There are no disruptions. When you look at what transpired in Pretoria, they were vibrant, but it ended how? And then also the first one in PE, it was formidable, it was vibrant, and there was a clear match, but they didn't implement. If they had implemented the PE resolutions identifying a new cadre and implement that, I think they could have avoided some of the tragedies.
Very quickly before we wrap it up.
Indeed. In fact, we were actually speaking with Sof about it to say that there was an element of being subdued. It's possible they are reserving everything for the commissions. Perhaps their focus is more on the commissions, which is, by the way, the most important work that they've come here for. So if that's the case, I guess they would have perhaps starting to transition into that new cadre who looks at the issues. Because when all is said and done, Thulas and Sophie, we can talk about the ANC and its issues, but it's what the ANC has done in terms of service delivery and how it has conducted itself in the eyes of the public.
All right, thank you for that. I do imagine that perhaps that will be the arena where it's all discussed, because if we're saying that the campaign, the electoral campaign was lackluster and it was uninspiring because of service delivery failures and other issues of corruption, etc., who must be held accountable? I have to leave it there for this evening. Mzwandile Mbeje and Sophie Mkwena, wrapping up day one of the ANC's NGC. Bongiwe and Tembegile. Yeah, that's how it's looking here at Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center this evening. There's still a long stretch for the delegates, but also a long stretch for all of us in the coming days as the NGC continues in the coming days.
All right, Thulasizwe Simelane there, our colleague, and with, of course, our other colleagues, Sophie Mkwena as well as Mzwandile Mbeje, tracking the developments at the NGC for you. It's a long night, as Sophie always says. It's a long night for them there, and one can expect